The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Keep your mission on your mind and your mind on your mission. This is Mission Minded with Michael Coleman.
Welcome to another edition of Mission Minded. We always talk about keeping your mind, your mission, and your mind. It's a great show with Michael Coleman. Of course, Michael's been working in non-for-profits. How long have you been doing non-for-profits, Michael?
Oh, well into my second decade. And, of course, I have found that with the 21 years I spent in the military, that leadership, a lot of those leadership issues kind of bleed over. So if you look at military and nonprofit life together in leadership positions, it's a good 35 years.
There you go. And it's all about service, man. And when you can service and you realize we need to love each other and take care of each other, life gets a little easier for you. And so something very important has happened in your life. Do you want to share what's going on with you right now? Because this is going to give us an entire show.
Sure. I transitioned from the Jimmy Hill Mission, which I love and is just doing great work in Birmingham, back down to the Montgomery, Alabama area, and I'm going to be the new CEO of the Montgomery Area Food Bank, which actually is the largest one in the state of Alabama. It serves over 35 counties, which are over half the counties in the state of Alabama, and just does wonderful work. I can't wait to get started with them. They've got some challenges, as you might expect, as every organization does. But the guy I'm taking over from is a super good guy. Really worked hard. The organization has a great reputation. There are some things that, like I said, with all organizations, need a little tweaking here and there. But I'm just chomping at the bit to get over there and be with a great group of people who are making such a difference in so many people's lives. You
can listen to Mission Minded. Of course, we do it every single week right here on Wednesdays. It runs at noon and 7, live on Tony Kurre Radio, and also go to Spotify, search Tony Kurre Radio, and you can listen to all of our previous episodes. Tony Kurre Radio, that's Kurre with a K, and Mission Minded with Michael Coleman. It's very interesting because, first of all, congratulations. I know this is a job that you really want to do, and they're blessed to have you. But you were talking about the Jimmy Hill Mission, where that was such a multifaceted type of non-for-profit, because you basically had to do it all, everything from addictive properties to food to shelter to everything else. Now you're kind of honing in on one thing, and that being the food bank. Am I wrong there? Or I would think this would be a little bit easier to attack. No.
Well, yes, but I will tell you, and people in the nonprofit world will, who are already in this, will understand this. At the Jimmy Hill Mission, you were doing direct services. So clients were coming to us, and like I said, we had direct hands-on. And so when you do direct services, it's easier to see the impact. It's a little bit easier to tell the story of lives that are changing. And that really helps bleed into fundraising, because people obviously want to be associated with organizations that are making great changes in their community and benefiting their community. A food bank is a little bit different in that we are giving food to those who will then give people food. Because the individuals who need the food don't come to us. It is the agencies in all the 35 counties that come to us. And so sometimes you have to be a little bit more intentional, if you will, about how do you, because the stories won't necessarily come from our people we're giving the food to. It'll come from the people they're giving the food to. So how do you track all that and tell that story when you almost have an intermediary between you and the actual recipient of the food? So it's just a little bit different challenge. But with inflation and cost of fuel, look, there's so many people who otherwise are like, I can make ends meet. Then you jack up the price of fuel, you jack up everything else to include food, and now you've got people standing in line for food assistance who otherwise would be fine. And so what ends up happening is, especially across half the state of Alabama, well, then those agencies will turn to the food bank and say, hey, now we need more. And so more and more burden in times like this gets placed upon the food bank. So it's just essential that the food bank is running at and regardless of where the food bank is, that it's running as efficiently and as effectively as you can, which really gives me what I'm looking for when I begin to go in and start evaluating even on my very first day, is to begin to look at key things to make sure that there's no dead weight, there's no dead space, that each part of the organization is communicating with the other. Nobody's operating in silos. And it's just so many things that go in that to make sure that we are running as effectively as we can. This
is Mission Minded here. We do it every single Wednesday live on Tony Curry Radio at noon and 7 with Michael Coleman. Of course, you can also hear the shows all on Spotify. Info at TonyCurryRadio.net. Info at TonyCurryRadio.net if you want to leave some email questions. You could certainly make an argument that this type of non-for-profit you're into right now is an epidemic in and of itself. Maybe even it is a pandemic. We certainly saw it during COVID when kids couldn't eat lunches at schools because schools weren't in. And then you in an international way, you talk about the Ukrainian issue where all these huge ships full of grain are not being sourced through their ports, and that's affecting the entire world, primarily Africa. So, I mean, just from a Montgomery standpoint, what need do you see down in our capital city when it comes to food banks? Because when you throw in inflation and grocery prices up 23% from year to year, it is a real issue, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of this area that the Montgomery Food Bank covers is what's known as the Black Belt. And for those who may not know this, there's a large territory of Alabama called the Black Belt, and that has nothing to do with race. It has to do with the soil, and it's great black rich soil, but it also describes a lot of the territory that is very impoverished. Some of the poorest counties come out of the Black Belt region. And so, people are already struggling as it was under the best of circumstances because a lot of the industry doesn't go there to provide great jobs. Why? Because you don't have the people with enough education or enough skill sets, or you have transportation issues. And so what ends up happening is you get areas that develop what they call food deserts. And so we take this for granted because we're able to get up and go get in our car and go to the store anytime we need something, or, hey, I'm going to grab some food on the way home or whatever. But imagine if you're very poor, maybe not in your elderly, you may not have your own transportation even anymore, and there's no local grocery store for you to go to. Yeah. So the nearest grocery store may be 25 miles away. And so you see how quickly people can get into dire straits if you do not have a community that's looking after one another, if those resources are not there. And that's what so many of these agencies are trying to do. They're trying to fill those gaps in these communities and make sure that, especially the ones with the food deserts in it, and in your poorer communities, are able to fill that need to make sure that people are just able to eat enough. And again, we take it for granted, but I think back during COVID when we were all in this toilet paper shortage and the alcohol shortage, and all that kind of stuff. And people were panicking and frustrated because, hey, I've got the money, but there's just nothing on the shelves for me to pull from. Well, that's a lot of the frustration that people who are just trying to survive and just trying to get to the next meal. And, I see Meals for Wheels take so many out into the community. So many people who need it, who don't have, are looking after the elderly. It's just an example of how much how much of a food need that there is. And for those in the audience who have not gone through that themselves, it may be something that they don't even think about, but I'm telling you, it's so many people are dependent on these agencies. Churches do it, agencies do it, communities do it. And now when we think, wow, we've got over half the state depending on us and our relationship with Feeding America to get food on the table, it's a huge responsibility. And we really have to, thankfully, Montgomery, like I said, Montgomery Food Bank has done an excellent job. They have a great reputation. I just have to make sure that we just are able to do it to the best of our ability out of service to our community members.
And you're listening to the new CEO of that Montgomery Food Bank, and he's Michael Coleman. I'm so excited for you just as a friend and certainly from a job standpoint. And I just love the fact because we've had so many emails about people wanting to start their own non-for-profits and what they do when they first get started from the ground up. And you're kind of doing that. You're obviously at an institution and a wonderful organization that is already solidified in that area, and you're going to take it to another level. Let me ask you this, and I've got a couple people in the studio that are actually asking me some questions. Food bank, what exactly do you give as a food bank? Is it all groceries? Is it diapers and stuff, or is it primarily food, perishable, non-perishable? And does the majority of the food that you distribute out to these other delegates, if you will, is it coming from major industries? Is it coming from restaurants that aren't serving meals? And is it also coming from personal people?
Well, I'm not. I think I have a pretty good grasp. I'll tell you what I think that I know in terms of the logistics, having not really fully immersed myself in this yet. There's really two parts of the food bank. One is governed by the USDA, and you get things like meats and breads. I mean, certain meats and cheeses and things like that go out to these communities. That's governed by the USDA, and to make sure that it's safe and make sure that it's tracked separately, make sure there's not abuses in the system. That food goes through the system, has to be inventoried from place to place. There has to be paperwork accounting for every piece of meat that goes from one place to another down to the client. And so all of that has to be accounted for. But then you have lots of organizations like Walmart and Publix and Big Lots and all that kind of stuff that give of their excess. Lots of times people, I know the food bank has a manual from the USDA that really says if you go to a grocery store, they typically have a sell-by date on everything. Mm-hmm. And we're not talking about, I'm talking more canned goods than anything else. And so they're not going to sell it. They're not going to try to sell it in the store if it goes past that date. But the USDA has determined that a lot of those canned goods are still good for another year. Yeah. And so since they can't sell them in the store, they donate them to the local food bank. And then the food bank uses those that are still good, maybe past the expiration date, but still good, and make sure that it goes through the system to get into the hands of the people who need it. Now, what the food banks typically do is sell food in bulk, but they're not priced individually. They do it by the pound. Okay. And usually it's something along the lines of 18 cents a pound. I think that's what the Montgomery Food Bank charges. And that doesn't matter if you're talking about a pot roast or if you're talking about canned green beans. It doesn't, if you're talking about diapers that come across, whatever it is that's available and what's been donated, that all gets put in there and it gets weighed, and you basically get charged by the total pounds. And so I remember taking back in the day when I used to go to the Montgomery Food Bank, because I was working with an agency that was giving out food and helping people in the community, and you get 2,000 pounds of food for, less than $400. Yeah. And you would be able to help so many families just make it from paycheck to paycheck. And so it just makes a huge difference. Now, because the area that we cover is so big, we have these like little distribution points, and they're their own organizations. And so we take out truckloads and take them to these distribution points so that those counties surrounding that area can then be serviced by there. So you don't have 35 counties actually coming to us in Montgomery. We try to make it as convenient as possible for them, but we're the only ones that are connected with Feeding America, which is even though we're on our own separate nonprofit, it is the governing agency, if you will, for the food distribution, works for the USDA, establishes all the rules to make sure that the food is healthy, safe, and is accounted for like it should be.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about where we have come, just say over the last 5 to 10 years, as far as in food banks, generally speaking, have come from? Because I obviously I've been blessed enough. I mean, I'll eat some frozen stuff out of the refrigerator, the freezer, that I'm not sure what it is on occasion because I'm a bachelor. But when you're talking about people that are going from paycheck to paycheck and didn't have food. And I certainly am talking about the COVID situation where there were so many people that weren't working, that didn't have jobs. And for the first time in their life, they had to go to a food bank to actually feed their families. And it was people of all walks of life. And I didn't really hear, I knew there were food banks. I knew there's been food banks for 100 years, but it just seems like over the last 10 to 15 years, this country, which has got just so much excess, has really found the sweet spot in trying to help people that can't find food.
Yeah, it's been my experience that when especially you'll find this in churches, a church will say, hey, we want to minister to our community. And usually one of the first places they start with is to become an agency of the food bank to be able to distribute groceries. And so every agency that wants to do that you either have to be a church or a 501c3. You have to go through training. You have to go through an annual inventory of your site. I mean, there's regulations. We have people that have to go to site and inspect. So, I mean, nothing's left to chance. And there's nobody that's coming and getting food bank food and then like doing it's not being checked. Their facilities are not being governed. The rules, all the inventory, all that kind of stuff. So they've really done a great job of taking mass amounts of donations from organizations and cycling those through and putting those together. And let me tell you just a couple of really special things that they do. They've been able to kind of specialize. So there's a program that allows you once a month to take a supplemental box to the elderly who sign up for it. So if your agency, if you're a local church, then you can say, yes, I need 10 senior supplemental boxes. And they're things specifically designed and focused on for senior needs, for nutrition, for all those kind of things. And so there's special boxes that don't count against that. It gets counted differently. I mean, usually I think they're absolutely free. And so what they've been able to not just refine their processes, but really specialize in a lot of things, because it's more than just getting food out to people. You say, well, there's people with special needs and special things, special attention that they need focus on, like the elderly. And so the food banks, now each one is different with what they're able to do, what they choose to do, what their focus is. But the ones that I've seen that are really effective, like you said, do their job so well of getting the food out. And now they're able to get in some of these specialty areas, even so much as going into the schools and educating people. Mm-hmm. I have found that there's a stigma. It's embarrassing if you've never had to stand in food line and then all of a sudden you have to go stand in there, and it's demeaning. It's dehumanizing. It can be. So I've really seen this educational push of helping agencies make that as comfortable as possible, to not take away somebody's self-worth, and to just be supportive and encouraging to them through that process. So there's just a lot of areas that they've touched on and just made the process better in helping people, so they wouldn't feel shame or embarrassed to come and stand in the line.
Amen, brother. Michael Coleman with Mission Minded. Keep your mind, your mission, your mind. You can hear the show, of course, every Wednesday here at noon and 7 live. First run shows. We do them live every single week. And, of course, you can also hear them on Spotify. Go back and listen to all of our previous episodes at Mission Minded right here on Tony Curre Radio. So you are the brand new CEO. I love this because, again, we could probably get 3 or 4 different shows out of this. I had 13 different general managers when I was in radio until I was my own GM, and now I got my own GM. He's doing stretches on the floor right now. He's my director of programming operations, James Michael Keats. And they usually come in, and sometimes they go, listen, I'm not here to shake the cage. It's running good. Everyone keep doing your job, and I'm out. I'm just good, and if you need me, I'm here. Then there's other guys that'll come in, and despite everything's running pretty good, they want to have their fingerprint on everything, and they want to go everywhere from the janitor's closet all the way to the penthouse and start mingling and going through things to see how they can make things better. And I certainly understand both. And then, of course, you also have your hatchet guys, too, that come in and is being brought in to cut jobs, which I've been a part
Right.
which I've been a part of. My last guy did a pretty good job at that. So what kind of guy are you as you come in? Because when we talked earlier today, you were like, I want to tell you what I want to do with the first 100 days as the CEO of this organization. How do you do it?
Well, this goes back to my military days. When I took over command of a unit, I remember going in, and I was already familiar with this unit, and they were doing this huge exercise. And so I sat down with them and I said, tell me about what you're going to do. And they told me. And so I asked, well, explain to me why you chose to do something that, the way that you've chosen to do it. And I was not challenging them in the sense of, well, I think this is wrong. I wanted them to know why they had chosen to do this. Like, hey, we researched it. We found out this is the best way. And the guy looked at me and said, well, that's just the way we've always done it. And so he was just year to year doing the same exercise, just going through the motions. And I said, well, do you know if that's the best way? Because I'm not a change for the sake of change guy. If we're doing it the best we can do it, then it would be wrong to change it. What I want to do is burn a couple of brain cells to ask ourselves the question and research and say, is it the best? And if it is, great, let's keep doing what we're doing. But we will know because we took the time and we weren't afraid to analyze our processes and say, is there a better way? Because our interest and our goals have to be, we want to be the best and the most efficient, the most effective in every single area, which means you have to put those areas under a microscope to test that. So I'll give you another example. In the nonprofit world, there was an agency being run that I was overseeing, and I went to that person who was running that and asked them, well, what does success look like to you? And when they said what their definition of success was, it was drastically different than my definition of success. So I knew if our goals, if our end states were vastly different, then our processes were not going to match. And so it let me know, it gave me an idea, hey, there's going to be a lot of attention that needs to be put in this area. So, because when I'm coming in, there's a million things to look at. And so I have to quickly be able to determine not how to change it, but to be able to go through my assessment process as to what's working and what needs to be, where do I need to put my focus. As a matter of fact, our board that interviewed me, I had 3 different board members kind of ask me in different ways, well, what's going to be your priority if you were to be offered the job? You know, what are you going to come in? What are you going to prioritize? And I said, well, the first thing I have to do is assess and figure out what's already doing great and what really needs my attention. And then that's going to drive where I shift my focus to. And which means I'll tell everybody, we have people that have been there for 20 years. Guess what? I'm going to analyze what they do. I'm probably going to find out those guys are doing it great. And I'm going to pat them on the back and I'm going to encourage them. I'm going to say, hey, I'm here for you. Let me know what you need. I want you, thank you for what you're doing. And I'm going to move on and put my attention in other places that need it. But I still have to check. I still have to understand. I still have to analyze to see, is it the best we can do it? And when you're the new guy coming in, people feel threatened by that. People are like, I've been here 20 years. Who's this guy coming in? I mean, those are just natural things that I know I'm going to encounter. So I try to let people know, listen, I'm trying to learn, I'm trying to grow. But I have a responsibility to the board. I have a responsibility to our donors, to our community, to do the best we can. And so I'm going to go through that process in every area of the organization and see where we truly are.
So when you do start seeing, and he's Michael Coleman, Mission Minded here on Tony Curre Radio, and a few more minutes left here on our show we do every Wednesday, and of course on Spotify at Tony Curre Radio. So when you do see some changes, how do you, because you're a pretty easygoing guy, right? And everyone really likes you, and you're not a hellraiser. When you do see things that you want to change, or maybe some new things that you actually want to implement, because I think whenever you bring in a new boss, everyone kind of freaks out a little bit, and usually the people that are freaking out aren't doing their job right. They're the ones, if you're freaking out because you got a new GM, you were probably on the way out. How do you deal with those people?
Well, the first thing I try to do is I try to get their input. It's so much better if you can determine where you want to go, bring the supervisor, the person in charge of that area, but you make it their idea. So if I said, I would much rather go to I'm just going to make this up, director of operations and say, hey, I've gone through the processes, help me. What do you think about it? What do you see anything that needs changing or whatever? You try to give them a chance to make it their idea. And then I'd say, okay, well, I here's what I witnessed, and I have some thoughts about it, but do you have some thoughts about it? And then I try to give them, well, I've thought about doing this, rather than just coming in an authoritative way and say, this isn't working. It's your fault. You're in charge. Either get it right or this is the way we're doing it. You try to spend the time building the relationship to say, listen, I'm not interested in assessing blame or saying why something's not working effectively, or it may be working, but may not be working to the best it can. Here's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in, let's get it right. And I'm counting on you to be the linchpin in all this. So in other words, I'm not coming at you saying something's your fault or you're to blame. I'm just seeing it with fresh eyes. And as the leader of the organization, I feel like here's our end result and here's a good process, but I can't do it without you. I need you on board with me. And I'm here to help build you up and help you be successful in this. So I try to come at it from a relational standpoint and not an authoritative standpoint where I'm just shoving stuff down people's throat. Now, having said that, I have had people that no matter how much I try to connect with them and no matter how much I try to bring them on board, they just dig their heels in. And at the point that I feel like that I have communicated effectively where we want to go, I've given them space to come and to have a seat at the table, to show respect to them and their work to the organization. If they dig their heels in, then I have to typically mandate it and then document. I'm documenting employees' resistance behavior and dealing with them in a more face-to-face, like if somebody doesn't want to do it, I say, look, we've talked this through. I really feel like this is the best way to go. I know you don't agree with it, but we're doing it.
There you go.
And
we're doing it.
We're doing it.
We're doing
so
it.
You just got
you come with me or not.
That's right. And there's been times to where even then people are still resistant to it because they are not. Unfortunately, there are people out there who their goal is to maintain their power base. It's not to make the organization successful. So even if I've explained a better way, that person would hope that better way fails, even though it would be good for the organization if it succeeded. They hope it fails and they'll work towards it failing because their number one priority is being right and maintaining their power base. So I have had people before I fired them where I have given them very strict, you will do X, you will do Y, you will do Z, and you will do it on this days and this time. But I don't manage like that. And I typically don't keep somebody over an important area that I have to dictate things like that to, because I feel like it's demeaning. Mm-hmm. It's not something I want to be involved in. What I like to do is get somebody on board. I want to encourage their thoughts, their ideas, their leadership, and say, hey, here's the end state. Here's where we want to get to. I'm going to let you use your gifts and talents of how to get us there. I've got some thoughts I'll share, but I'm here to support you. You tell me, do you have what you need to be able to get to where I want you to get? Do you need more people? Do you need more resources? Do you need more? Tell me what you need. And then it's my job to provide that to you. In other words, I can't hold you accountable of doing something if I've not sufficiently given you the training, the the education, the support, the people, and all the resources you need to make it happen. So I really like an open relationship where I'm going to be ambitious. I'm going to push our guys.
Yeah.
When I say guys, I mean, men and women together. I'm going to push our people hard, but I'm never going to ask them to do something that I've not fully equipped them to be successful. The only thing that would keep them from being successful is they just lack the desire and the work ethic.
And you'll weed those people out, and for good reason, because I know what you expect from your workforce, and they should know what to expect from you too. Hey, congratulations on your brand new gig. I'm so excited to. This is like a new season of Mission Minded here, as we kick off the Montgomery Food Bank season of Mission Minded here with Michael Coleman. Thank you so much. Good luck to you. You talked about what you want to do in the first 100 days. We didn't even get to it, so we'll get to that next week. So you'll be 7 days in next time we talk. I want to hear everything you're into 7 days in. I want just a boatload of stuff, all right?
I'll be waist deep in it by then.
I'll bet you will be. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, brother.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.